Making Informed Dental Business Decisions. This is part 2 of a discussion between Doctors Gerry Samson and Jeff Burg.
So if a DSO comes to you and says, yes, we want to partner with you, we want to purchase, say, 50 or 60% of your practice, and then you get to keep 40%, your 40% of your practice gets rolled in to the value of the overall company. That's interesting. A lot of people like keeping some money, in the investment themselves. But if it was going to be tied up for 20 years, that's maybe not such a good thing. You want to be able to access it every once in a while. And so, the traditional DSO that actually does flip every 3 to 5 years, those are the opportunities where investors could get some of their money back. And you might think that maybe would not be the case with specialty dental brands, but in fact, it's actually more so because they bring on. So while there are these private equity funds that like to own a majority of the partnership, there are also ones that just want to piggyback onto an investment that looks good and is already running. They don't want to run it. They just want to piggyback as a minority investor. And so specialty dental brands, part of their model is that they look for some of these funds every 18 months to 2 years. They'll bring on a minority investor, say 15 or 20%. And those are the opportunities where people in specialty dental brands who have equity can still cash out and make some, take some of their investment back as it grows. So you sort of get the best of both worlds.
Perhaps the single most important thing is that there was not this drop dead time frame.
Correct.
You found that very interesting. You also, am I correct? You also found it interesting that you had a specific opportunity to have equity in specialty dental brands as part of your arrangement. Isn't that right?
Right. Yeah. With any group if we had gone with any group, we really would have wanted to keep some equity, in the organization moving forward. And so, yeah.
Well, people listening to this can easily imagine that if the term here, of course, in the USA is skin in the game. I mean, if you have a definite vested interest for you and your family in this organization being successful. Other than that, Jeff, what were other deal makers and deal breakers as you looked at your different options?
Well, anybody who's considering this needs to consider what the value of their practice is. I mean, that's a big part of it. And for a DSO that is backed by traditional private equity, they really have to, they've made commitments to their investors. They have to get a certain return. And to get that return, they really need to buy low so they can sell high and get the return for their investors. When you have a family office like Leon Capital, if they're interested in making a splash in the dental industry, they're willing to pay a little more to get that growth going. And that's what, sort of proved out. So besides the model in that there's not this automatic 3 to 5 year flip that has to happen, the other compelling thing is that, frankly, they're willing to pay more, for a good group or a good practice.
Yeah, I think one of the focuses that we have in specialty dental brands is we're not interested in acquiring practices that have a sketchy reputation.
That's right.
We do a lot of due diligence and a lot of basically detective work, figuring out who are these people because it's going to affect everybody. Is that a fair statement?
Right. And that was probably the third component to us, besides there's not a set time horizon and they give a healthy, valuation for our practice, was just their, the group. I mean, they're not looking for offices that they need to turn around. They're looking for, solid practices that are in that healthy, plateau. They're not startup, but they're also not kind of dying. So they're healthy. They're doing a lot of things right, and then also because of their unique emphasis on three specialties: pedo, ortho, and oral surgery. There are some synergies there that they're able to capture that a lot of other groups, maybe aren't. So that means in our area, if there's a pedo group and some orthodontists and some oral surgeons, certainly there's no requirement that anybody refer within our own sort of network, but because they're getting great practices, reputable doctors. In fact, the people that they have are people that we already referred to anyway. And so it just makes a very tight, cohesive group, and it makes for a great, experience for those who are still in it, still practicing. It makes for a good overall feel. Yeah.
What would be your advice about the main things to consider for someone who is seriously, is this a good time for me to sell? Now, what I've heard from my side, I hear this pretty routinely as well. Not yet, but I'll be ready in 5 years. It's incredible how often I hear this 5-year window. Like, in 5 years, I'm going to cut way back, or in 5 years, I'm going to retire. I mean, to me, that's fairly remarkable that everybody sits, and then with personal friends, I found it incredibly amusing that 2 years after that, I'd say, now, what's your time frame? Oh, about 5 years. And I said,
yeah.
But you said that 2 years ago. What? So what would you say about advising people about their own professional timeframes?
First of all, I mean, I would say this: everyone is a little bit different. Every practice is a little bit different, and so you can take what I say or leave it. I mean, everyone has their specific requirements for their own timing, and that's totally personal. If they're in a group, it's a group decision. For me,
let me interrupt you one second. How old are you, Jeff?
I just turned 50 last year.
All right, and you have a family.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And how many children do you have?
4 kids, actually 2 grandkids.
Okay, well, that's a story for another interview.
Yeah.
But the reason I wanted to bring that up is when people are thinking, well, I'll retire. I'll look at this when I'm 60 or 65 or such as that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that up. But anyway, rave on with what you were saying.
Yeah, well, one thing to consider is this. So if you're somebody who's saying, yeah, maybe in 5 years or maybe in 10 years even, what are you going to bring to the table to add value to your current practice in that 5-year window? And my guess is that the value of your practice, if you're already past this, if you're more than 5 years out practicing, you're probably at this plateau. What's really going to happen? Are you if you're a group or if you're a doctor who is interested in growing by locations, that's great, but most aren't. And if you're not, what are you going to add between now and 5 years from now? So all you're doing is you're putting off the nugget or the value of your practice that you're going to get when you sell it, right? Instead, why not get that now and then let that money work for you? To be honest, whatever you get now, in 5 years, you're probably going to double the value of that. And so, if you invest it wisely, if you're just going to go, buy a boat and something, maybe not, but take the value of what your practice is worth now, stay on and continue to work as a doctor and make your doctor's salary. But now you've got that, nest egg. Do something with that to let it add value so that when you are ready to retire, you're not retiring on the value of one practice. Maybe you've doubled the value of that 2 or 3 times before you are ready to retire. So to me, from a time value of money, it makes a lot more sense to pull that out now and let that grow for you, for the time when you are ready to retire. So that's, I mean, to me, that's probably one of the biggest, even for a guy who's 40 years old and sees 20 more years down the road, like, what are you really going to add to the value of your practice in 20 years? Is it going to make that much of a difference where you could take that value and in 20 years, probably triple or quadruple what you would take out of it in 20 years.
With reasonably smart investing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now,
take that value, invest it while you're continuing to work as a doctor. And then when you are ready to retire, you're not retiring on, say, $1 million, you're retiring on $4 or $5 million. I mean, that's a lot more compelling than, to me, than the other way. Now, another is, money matters aside, and I get it. I mean, those are real considerations, but there are some other benefits as well.
Let me jump in with one thing here. That, in this segment, and then don't let me steal your thought, but in dentistry in general, but especially in pediatric dentistry, even more so, perhaps in some areas of the country than orthodontics, dentists have two visions. The pediatric dentist or the orthodontist has one of two visions. Within the next 2, 3, 5 years, my practice will either be a lot better or it'll be the same. Where the vision, there is not this idea that things can go pear-shaped, as they say in England, like that. Well, now everybody sees it differently because of the pandemic.
Right.
That things can go wrong, and they can go wrong very, very quickly. Now, to your point of investing, well, who would have ever thought that with all of this incredible uncertainty that's gone on in the world, specifically our world of the USA, that the stock market would have kept doing so well. And, there were people in the beginning, even pre-COVID, but right in the beginning saying, get out of the stock market, get out now. Well, they missed a big hit. So for those listening to this, think about it. Are you one of these people that thinks, well, next year or 2 years, my practice will either be better or the same? Well, that's how I thought, because my orthodontic practice, even though I'm dual trained, I only practiced orthodontics only on children and teenagers. That was my niche. Every year it was doing, like, some years it actually started doing that, and then kind of a sine wave. But there was never a year that it slipped off. So that, I think, if you're listening to this, be honest with yourself. If you're thinking, yeah, that's kind of how I think, well, you should be thinking, no, not necessarily. Anyway, Jeff, continue on, please.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I mean, COVID really, I think the reason we've seen this boom in the groups and the DSOs and the consolidation of dental practices is because there's a lot of money out there. There are a lot of people looking for a good return on their investment. And dentistry, by and large, pre-COVID, proved to be a really good investment. COVID has sort of opened the possibility that, you could actually have a down year. I mean, I know maybe 2009, there were some practices that had down years, especially if you were largely cosmetic or whatever. But yeah, I mean, COVID really introduced that in a big way. And I think there had been a lot more interest on the part of dentists, taking a closer look at what they thought was going to be possible in the next few years, like you say. One of the other compelling things, I think, is this idea of, there are a lot of practice owners out there who would rather not get bogged down in sort of the business side or the administration side of their practice. Some of them will have an office manager and they leave everything up to her, and there are maybe some advantages to that, but there are also some things to be aware of, some cautions there. But regardless of what they do with that, they're just not interested in the day-to-day human resources, compliance, OSHA. You know what I mean? They would rather stick to their craft. And, by joining a group like Specialty Dental Brands that has a lot of those administrative functions and systems down, it really helps, it helps the practitioner to kind of just stick to seeing patients. So that's a benefit for those who are not interested in running their, having a finger in marketing and human resources, and I need to interview this person and I run my own payroll. That's a lot of stuff that gets in the way of, what the doctor is really best trained to do. And so, partnering with a group like Specialty Dental Brands, they centralize and they add a lot of features. They're also able, frankly, it's hard to compete with a larger group because they're able to leverage their size and get better deals when it comes to supplies or marketing or, whatever. They're able to drive their costs down, so they actually get an even better, margin at the end of the day.
Now, one of the things that I've cautioned people about that are actually asking my advice that have not made a decision at all is if your personality is that of a micromanager and you are one of these people that is got to just be controlling everything at all times, I don't know that you're a very good fit for any DSO. Because you're going to question everything they do. I mean, that will not be a synergistic reaction. Do you agree?
I would agree with that to a little bit. There's another part of it where most of those guys, I mean, to make it in dentistry and, even a specialty within dentistry, that's a lot of schooling. We're talking about a lot of smart individuals. And I think most of them who are very, have their pulse on every little part of their practice because they like to, I think they're also interested in knowing if what they're doing is the right thing. And so when you have a group where you've got, 100 practices or 200 practices, you're able to really see what really are the best practices among, individual offices. Does my direct mail ad, can I really show return on investment for that versus what somebody else is doing? So what I'm saying is those guys who really do like to have their fingers in every little aspect of their practice, I think they're also looking for, they have their finger on every little aspect of the practice, but they also like to know, is what I'm doing the right thing? Or is there something else I ought to consider? And in being with a group, you get to see a really, vast array of what is working for a lot of different practices. A lot of us, when we're on our own, frankly, we don't know if what we're doing is the smartest thing or the best thing. We're just relying on our gut, or if we are tracking our results, say through marketing, we do get some, but we're also interested in what other people are doing and what is working. And so I wouldn't say completely that the micromanager is a bad fit for a DSO. I would say that the expectation of having your finger on every little aspect of your practice, that expectation needs to be tempered with the fact that you're part of like a larger organization now. And when you're one office and one doctor and one owner, you can try every little thing you want. You can throw some money at this, you can throw that against the wall, see if it sticks. In a larger group, you can still do that, but there's a process to it. And so I would say that, instead of being able to make a decision on a dime, you just have to go into it with the expectation that this is a reasonable group. And if I make a reasonable, plea for maybe being able to do this one thing, I should expect that reasonable people will see the value in that. But you also need to just be like, yeah, you're part of a larger organization, and you can't have 100 doctors or 200 doctors or you know, in Heartland's case, you can't have 1,000 practices all doing their own thing with every little aspect of their practice. There has to be some things that tie it together, make it consistent, and you have to trust that those systems are going to work. Yeah, is a group practice, or is, you know, a DSO a good fit for a micromanager? I would say it depends. You just have to go into it with your expectations realistic, and with your eyes open. If you do that, it can work. It can be a good fit. Um, you know, you just have to, the expectation has to be, you know, lined up with reality. If your
So you,
expectation is that you're going to be able to do everything you want to do independently but still be part of this group, that's not the right expectation to have, no matter what group you're joining.
okay, now there's an interesting point that I think bears repeating, because you don't want to get into a situation with somebody that turns out to be a a bad business decision, but no one wants to get in with us either. So would you
Exactly.
repeat what you just said? If your expectation is that,
Yeah, if your expectation is that everything is going to operate exactly as it has for the past 10, 20, however long you've been doing it, that you can't have that expectation. The expectation has to be for the DSO to have any value, there have to be some shared systems, some operations that tie practices together. You can't, you know, you can't expect to do everything and anything, whatever you want, anytime you want. I mean, one of the nice things about specialty dental brands is that they don't dictate to doctors, you know, how they practice, the systems, you know, in terms of treating patients. They don't, you know, dictate the systems. I mean, I know we have some orthodontists who like using an orthodontic system that happens to be very expensive, right? Specialty dental brands did not go into those practices and say you have to switch to this other similar product. They just said, you guys like using this, that's fine. Let's just leverage the amount of people we have using this to see if we can get our costs down. That's how they operate. Some groups out there will sort of dictate, yeah, we can't have people using this system anymore. Everybody has to switch to this. Specialty dental brands doesn't do that. They let the doctors use the supplies, the equipment, the systems that they're used to using. They just try to leverage that. Now, but outside of that, the business side of a dental practice, that you have to go into it with the expectation that you're now part of a group, and maybe they have some systems, maybe they use a credit card processor that's different than the one you were using before, who was your nephew's whatever system. You have to be okay with switching that over, okay? Or
here's another one. I'm curious as to things that you would advise people. Now, these are things that are going to change. I'll drop one in, but think about other things that you would say from your standpoint. These are things that have to change. One of them, there was a deal with I was consulting with a different company, and we were looking at a practice. I'll leave it at that. Well, when the doctor found out that she could no longer run everything through her business, and I'm talking about vacations, going to Costco, going to Sam's Club, I mean, buying gas for her car. I mean, it was, let's just say, aggressive. When she found out, oh, no, you can't do that. You know, that's over.
right.
She said, well, if I would have known that in the beginning, I wouldn't even been talking to you. And, you know, well, in the kindest possible, I said, geez, you know, I can't recall when I've had a better conversation. She just didn't understand that.
Yeah. No, you, as the doctor, you know, you will become an employee basically. Like you don't have, now I get it. Like I think doctors ought to be maximizing, in terms of a tax perspective, everything they can when they're the sole owner of their operation. That's perfectly fine. But yeah,
Right, as long as you don't go to jail.
well, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. No, be legal, but
Yeah, right.
there are some things that you should be taking advantage of there, but
Yes.
legally, yeah. But yeah, yeah, that goes away when you join a larger organization because you're not the sole owner anymore of your thing. You can't write off every, every gas or every trip as like a, continuing education, whether it was or it wasn't. I mean,
Can't do
you
that.
can't do that anymore.
Yeah,
That's right.
because the corporations that, you know, if and when the corporation gets audited, I mean, this is
Yeah.
going to be like giant bullseyes. That's
Yeah.
going to be a big problem.
Well, and
Just
it's not if they get audited. To be honest, every large group automatically has a yearly audit. So that the financials are audited every year. So yeah, a lot of these things are the reason why is because the financials have to be completely clean, and you want that. I mean, you should want to be part of an organization that has audited yearly. They've got third party eyes on everything they're doing. They're 100% compliant. So yeah, you should want that of any partnership that you go into, but the expectation of being able to, yeah, like you said, run everything you want through your practice, that goes away. Now you're getting paid for that, so that goes into that valuation, and it goes into that nugget that you're going to collect here up front, so that you can, allow that to grow over time when you are ready to retire.